carpenter of Ante Pavelic, a Nazi leader in Croatia who lived in Mar del Plata, Argentina, during the 1950s.
Hitler. Y debe de haber sido fines del 53.
¿Y en qué circunstancias?
Venía
¿A dónde?
al edificio a hablar con Pavelic. Venía caminando con los 3 guardaespaldas y la señora. Prácticamente lo traían caminando, ¿no? Que apenas caminaba él.
Tenía la misma pinta.
La misma, de blanco, pelo corto, tipo militar, cortado, sin bigote. Ahí estuve yo conversando, me invitaron a sentarme en la mesa, me convidó la señora de Pavelic con un café. Hitler estaba tomando café con alguna bebida más con Pavelic. Y yo ahí le conté. Entonces, Pavelic le dice a Hitler, es el carpintero, dice que me hace la carpintería en el edificio. Entonces Hitler me miró y me hizo una reverencia así, en esta forma. Un saludo, ¿no? Más cerca de él. Estuve tomando café, inclusive.
¿Usted está convencido que era Hitler?
Sí, sí.
We all know that people live and die as an immutable law. There is nothing to argue about that. However, there are deaths of some special individuals that cause a lot of debate. And one of the most famous figures that is often mentioned is the German fascist boss Adolf Hitler. There are many versions of Hitler's death that have been told. Most believe that Hitler committed suicide by gun and his wife also committed suicide by poison a day later. Then both bodies were burned to ashes and thrown into the Elbe River. Many people believe that this couple faked their death and fled the country. Even Stalin said that he thought Hitler had fled to Argentina or Spain. Others believe that he had settled in the United States. In the 1940s, when World War II was raging fiercely on the battlefield of Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler's leadership, he was showing a terrible power that was unstoppable. On the intelligence front, the war is also fierce when both the CIA and Nazi intelligence are following the enemy's situation more closely than ever. In that situation, the British Central Intelligence Agency had a more special action. They created a mysterious medical record and then hid it for the next 15 years. This is the X-ray film stored in that special medical record. And of course it also belongs to a very special character, a 55-year-old man. And the X-ray film shows that he miraculously survived an explosion near the brain's end. The reason they stored this special medical record about this man is because he was extremely interested in the government. Can you guess who he is? His name is Adolf Hitler. Hitler's miraculous survival took place in 1944 after a failed bombing, the Nazi assassination attempt. Even the bomb could not take Hitler's life, but it left him with burns in several places and minor injuries. And of course the rebels understood that if Hitler didn't die, the one in the coffin would be them. But who was that big guy? It wasn't a TIE Wind, nor the Allies, nor the Soviets. The face was an officer in the Nazi ranks. He was Klusvith Stenberg. When the war turned against Germany, the brutality of Hitler's orders increased, and more Germans both in and out of the army began plotting to assassinate their leader. Because the people were unlikely to overthrow the man they had accepted to put their lives and futures in their hands, those closer to Hitler sought to take him down. Visain, the newly promoted colonel and commander of the reserve forces, was the perfect man for the job. His role allowed him to reach Hitler's headquarters without too much effort. But things didn't go as planned. The bomb killed 4 people. Skip the hit. Back to the secret of love medical records he created. We have information about Hitler's extremely special mental data. No obsessions or fears recorded, but emotionally very unstable. I think that means he is very clear about what he likes or dislikes. If he doesn't like, he will react harshly. Cutting too much makes people think it is unstable. Like that means Boss Fit there is also a bit of a psychological problem, as evidenced by the fact that in the intelligence records, he also recorded 28 types of drugs that Hitler used. 28 is not a small number, including strong antidepressants. I can imagine that Hitler really did not have an easy life. However, the most valuable and interesting thing is not in the content of the archived medical records, but in the date it was stamped December 1945, which means it was not confirmed until 8 months after Hitler died in Berlin. Why after so long after his death was the record, his medical examination only recently confirmed? The answer is because people did not know if the body found earlier was really Hitler's or not. Yes, they were not absolutely certain that Hitler was dead, and they were completely confident that the imposters could claim to be Hitler in the future. But why were they skeptical? Wasn't the Soviet Red Army already finding his body? Even the mainstream media announced his death. The testimony of a former SS prisoner confirmed that Hitler's body was doused with gasoline and burned. The main problem was that the skeleton was burned to ashes and taken away by the Soviets. Leader Joseph Stalin did not want to share the information with his brother or other allies. He could have provided definitive evidence of Hitler's death very quickly, but perhaps other considerations did not allow that to happen easily. Stalin was a strange person. Moreover, as the leader of the state, Stalin had even more reason to keep secret the exclusive information he had. It will somewhat catch the opponent off guard. That is, if a person claiming to be Hitler suddenly appears, he needs clear evidence to verify his identity. But what evidence can be completely reliable? The answer comes from the very special thing we talked about at the beginning of the video X-ray of Hitler's skull. In this world, no two people can have the same sinuses or skull bones absolutely. X-rays are as reliable as fingerprints. Using X-rays of the skull is a genius idea because it will definitely be found in the records collected by the Allies after the war. If you can find a film, you can compare it with any evidence. It will also be used to disprove any imposter who intends to impersonate him. By comparing the sinuses or skull bones, the accuracy is already very high, but you can find even more absolute accuracy if you compare his teeth. Teeth are something that has a very high level of authenticity in identifying the head of Nazi Germany. Let's look here. Hitler had very bad teeth. Many people who met him said that he had a pretty bad mouth. When the war ended, Hitler only had 5 natural teeth in his mouth. The rest were gold or porcelain teeth that were added over the years. Leo still does not confirm that the body found in Berlin is Adolf Hitler's. Britain has only one way to confirm the information. It is to rely on medical records. I have to confirm the information, but it seems like we have overlooked something very important. It must be intelligence. Where did you get that X-ray film? And how do we know it is exactly Hitler's? We need to know that it is not natural that until today, Hitler's death is still a controversial topic, and there is almost no satisfactory answer. Even the X-ray film just now sounds extremely reliable, but it is inherently not enough to completely convince those who believe that Hitler is still alive. Want to know if Hitler is really dead or not? Maybe we will go back together before that fateful day to see what happened to Hitler in the 24 hours that people thought were the last of his life. 0001, Sunday, 29th of October 1945. In the bunker, more than 9 Nainbauer underground, Eva Braun was preparing for her wedding. She was on the bed in the bunker having her hair done by the maid. Her long hair was swept to the right, according to the wishes of her fiancé Adolf Hitler, who hated makeup. Eva put on light makeup to look natural. She chose a long black silk dress, black suede shoes, Ferragamo gold bracelet with pink gemstones, topaz necklace, and her favorite diamond watch. Tonight, 14 years after starting a secret affair with Hitler, she will finally marry the man she loves. Look at how happy they are. I believe everyone would be happy if they knew they were about to marry a head of state. But Russia never imagined her wedding would take place underground. Because in the chaos when Russian tanks were rumbling into the center of Berlin, on the ground is no longer safe. And this bunker has a concrete roof 3 thick with stairs leading up to an old bunker above, which there is a corridor connecting to the basement of the Chancellor's office, where there is a hospital, a garage, and a network of rooms for ministers and officials. It is very safe. Eva has been here since January and has the most comfortable and beautiful room. And of course, there is always full of clothes, jewelry, and necessary contents. While above-ground line Duke is digging a grave to bury this man, her Vogelin brother-in-law from the countryside, and Phelan was executed half an hour ago by Hitler's order. He was a cavalry soldier serving in the bunker, but was discovered trying to take money and jewelry to run away with a woman who was not his wife. Actually, Hitler did not care much about the fact that he had just executed a subordinate with a close relationship. Now he had more things to worry about. Duro, 10. Adolf Hitler sat in his room. He was reading his political will to his secretary. At first, the secretary was very excited because she thought she would be the first to hear the reason why the Germans had lost the battle. But when she heard Hitler's monotone voice, she became more and more disappointed. Hitler revealed nothing. No explanation or expression of guilt. Just the same old accusations against the Jews that she had heard too many times before. Then, Hit met his generals in the conference room for half an hour. Hit yelled and screamed about the failure, the corruption, and betrayal of his subordinates. Then he broke down, crying, fired the Air Force, and declared defeat in the war. That was the first time he really admitted defeat. However, Hitler still had one big thing to do before he left this world. Yes, he had another wedding. Hitler and Eva played together at the age of 23. They met in October 1929, when Eva was a 17-year-old assistant in a Munich photo studio. Within 2 years, Hill started asking Eva out for coffee opera and lived together. The first 4 years of the relationship were very difficult with Eva because Hitler rarely called her and often disappointed her. Eva attempted suicide twice. After Eva fell into a coma after a failed suicide attempt in May 1935, Hill decided to accept Eva as his official lover. In addition to becoming B, Eva also dreamed of becoming a Hollywood actress. She had dreamed of when National Victory Stadium. I could play myself in a movie about our lives. The second time never came true, but at least Eva was prepared. Hitler, the judge, asked her to hide. The groom confirmed that they were pure Aryans and had no genetic diseases. Were held captive, the wedding took place with the participation of a few red people. Then time passed. On April 30th, 1945 in the morning, the news of Mussolini's death shocked Hitler. The body of the evil dictator was carried around the streets by angry crowds and was turned upside down. Hitler gave precise instructions to destroy the body after his death. He and his wife then went into a private room and closed the door. A shot rang out. The officers opened the door and found Hitler lying on the couch covered in blood. He had taken a tube of poison before shooting himself in the right temple. There were also documents saying he shot himself in the mouth, and some authors said there was a third person who shot him in the head. Eva lay next to him but only drank poison. The officers wrapped the two bodies in blankets and carried them outside. They placed the two bodies near the entrance, poured gasoline, and set fire. The Soviet Red Army arrived in BK on May 0th. At that time, stories began to overlap about Hitler's death and body. On May 4th, the Red Army displayed the body of a man introduced as Hitler, but they later retracted the statement, affirming that it was only a body double. Then Marshal Stalin himself confirmed that Hitler was still alive, hiding in Japan, Argentina, or Spain. Received U.S. Secretary of Defense James Bennis on May 17th. Of the same year, Stalin confirmed that thorough searches by investigators had not found anything found. Hide the body of Hitler, and there is no real evidence of his death. According to various rumors, people saw him in Dublin, Ireland, disguised as a woman. Rumors fee. Hitler continued to spread from generation to generation. About the rumor that Hitler and Eva escaped on a plane on the morning of April 30th, that is impossible. Because the nurses in the group who denied them said that on the morning of May 30th, they were very surprised to know that the Führer wanted to say goodbye to them. Hitler received the nurses along with his personal doctor Sturm Fager. If Hitler's body had been captured by the Red Army, they probably would have destroyed it. And there is no Hitler's grave in Berlin. The Russians did everything to make his body disappear forever to prevent Nazi fanatics from pilgrimaging to the temple. On May 16, 1945, many Spanish newspapers in South America reported that Adolf Hitler and his wife had not been committed suicide on the day as previously reported and fled to Argentina. According to a decrypted secret FBI document, some U.S. government officials were informed that many years after World War II, Hitler and Eva were still living normally in the village of La Angostura, the city of Baloche, which is a village more than 800 kilometers south of the capital Buenos Aires, near the border with Chile, and located right at the foot of the Red Andes mountain range. But as we said in the previous part, when the Soviet army entered the shadow of the fascists, Hitler and Eva committed suicide, and the bodies of these two people were identified. But this secret FBI document overturned all of the above information. It seems that the most hated person in human history escaped from Germany and lived a peaceful rural life in one of the small villages in the most beautiful valley of the Andes. Sources from within the FBI also revealed in detail that not only was information about the deaths of Hitler and Eva leaked, but he was also directed by the director of the U.S. Strategic Service Agency OSS in Switzerland. Alan Dulles helped escape. According to this declassified document of the FBI, OSS secretly used a submarine to bring several high-ranking Nazi officers to Argentina. But where did this information and documents come from? How much of its accuracy is compared to reality? In May 1945, These documents were sent to the Los Angeles Times by a mysterious person to request political asylum. The Los Angeles Times reported the incident to the FBI to investigate and clarify. The mysterious character confirmed the information that not only Hitler had escaped Stina, but this person was one of 4 people who went on the submarine and had encountered the Chinese fist more than 2 weeks after Belin's defeat. It seems that 2 submarines had docked at the same port of Argentina. Hitler and Eva went on the second ship. The Argentine government not only did they welcome this Chinese Nazi, but also helped him escape. The mysterious character mentioned above not only provided information about the exact address where Hitler was hiding, but also described each detailed characteristic for identification. However, in the FBI documents, this person's name was not mentioned. And of course, the provincial staff said that the US completely trusted this person's testimony. It seemed that someone in the high-ranking leadership of the FBI had ordered an attempt to cover up information about Hitler's survival, as well as his hiding place with a specific landlord. The identification information was clear, but the US intelligence staff did not allow an investigation. In 1945, the US military attaché at Buenos Aires also informed Washington that there was a high possibility that Hitler and Eva had docked at the port of Argentina. They investigated that the German submarine U-530 had appeared on the coast of Argentina to verify that. There were many witnesses and other evidence that also reinforced this possibility. The press at that time also reported that the villa named Maran Inaco, built by architect Alessandro Bustillo in 1943 in the Prussian style in the village of La Agosta, had been expanded to give money to the Germans who escaped from the camp. With Mr. Bustillo to reuse the house was paid for by very wealthy German immigrants. However, at that time, the travel to La Agosta was very remote and difficult because it was surrounded by high mountains and dense forests. Perhaps the most convincing evidence that Hitler survived the defeat of the Back Line only in Russia with the Soviet Red Army in Berlin, then Hitler's time would certainly have been immediately brought back to the Soviet Union. The part of the skull with a hole due to a bullet shot a long time ago is considered evidence for the hypothesis that Hitler shot himself in the head. According to scientists, the bone fragment was found with Hitler's jawbone and they put it on display in Moscow. In 2009, Nick Bell-Anany, scientist from the US Konkar University, flew to Russia where the bone fragment was displayed at the Inter-Russian Archives Center for testing. Right before doing DNA testing, Mr. Bell-Anany suspected that the bone fragment was not from the skull of an adult male. If you look closely, you will see that the bone is very small and thin. The skull of an adult male usually harder. Basically, it could be the bone of a woman or a young man. And I was amazed the DNA test results proved that the bone belonged to a woman between the ages of 20 and 40. And the test results also shocked the intelligence community and scientists when that DNA sample did not match Hitler's DNA, as well as the DNA samples, believed to be Eva's, also did not match the DNA of her family members. The question is, what was found in Hitler's bunker? And where was Hitler really? With all the newly decoded evidence, it is very likely that Hitler escaped from Germany. And not only that, but was also helped by the international intelligence community to escape. The FBI itself also knew about this and helped Hitler escape without being discovered. Just imagine what would happen if later people actually discovered that the prophet was still alive after the war, and what would happen when the whole world knew that they had been fooled. Hitler could be a tyrant, and although it is not clear whether he is alive or dead, we still know that he is not so bad. He is with his family. In the hours of true hardship, he also has some time to be a normal man, with a small wedding next to the person he loves. However, there are tyrants whose tyranny is inherently ingrained, and human nature means that with all elements including the closest people such as wife and children, they cannot escape bloody tragedy if he is not satisfied. And that is also what Queen Anne had to endure when she became the wife of King Henry. At the age of 30, Queen Tuyet of England was beheaded for adultery. You know, it is not for nothing that people call him the most shameless flower dresser in history. The king was the lover of his sister Mary Boleyn, but when he met her with black velvet eyes and a white Thantu neck, he immediately fell in love. Henry spent a lot of effort to conquer the beauty's heart, but like his previous wife, King Anne could not give birth to a son to continue the family line. He only had one princess so soon, the king's feelings cooled and he was bored. According to many people, Henry was a greedy king, quickly bored. Not long after, he found himself another beauty. Again was devastated by the beauty of another woman, so he used the reason that the queen had no son to abandon her. After only a few years of passionate love, Henry tried every way to distance himself from N, then found an excuse to remove N from the palace so that he could freely move around with other women. The king always found an excuse to cause trouble. Even more evil, he did not want to see her existence, but could not kill his wife for no reason. The king and his henchmen carried out the rape of Queen N. The detectives began to find evidence to convict the queen of adultery. A series of men were arrested, were tortured, and forced to confess to adultery with the queen, including her music teacher, 2 noblemen, and especially a younger brother of N Bin, was also falsely accused of having an illicit relationship with her. With this evidence, N was immediately arrested in and out of London for adultery. A queen. Adultery is also considered treason. Death is the law. It may have been known in advance, but that evil was not the biggest secret about King Henry the Bay, because everyone had known about it for a long time. The biggest tragedy of this bloodthirsty dictator was related to the health problems he encountered. Yes, it took people many years of research and speculation to decode the strange diseases that Henry the Bee had. And they believed that the cruelty of this dictator came from those strange diseases in a long list that was all personal though and unpredictable madness. The famous Henry the Bee was famous for the formation of health obsessions that his schooling at that time, as well as until the beginning of the 21st century, still had no way to find the root of the problem. The strange, inexplicable diseases that came to Henry the Bee in middle age and caused a series of miscarriages for his women, as we just mentioned, Henry the Bass really had a hard time finding an heir, and people were sure that the dictator must have had some secret health problems. Is it true that Henry the Bass was not normal? Or not a recent study, researchers have proposed the hypothesis that King Henry suffered from a disease related to the X gene and that he had a strange blood type. This could explain why his temperament was so strange and somewhat savage. As we know by studying the biological causes at important historical events, the study has brought new directions to think about the scandalous life of the most famous English king of the 16th century. Many historians have written quite detailed about the health problems related to King Henry the Bass, because when he was young, Henry was a very strong and energetic young man. But at the time before his death, King Henry the Bass became an overweight king with a body weight of nearly 150 kilos, because his body was so fat that he had ulcers on his legs. The muscles were visibly weakened. According to some royal medical documents, the king's personality had a significant change in middle age, expressed in symptoms such as more delusions, Europe depression, and mental breakdown. Among the above hypotheses, experts also said that King Henry had diabetes TP, 2 diseases and endocrine problems. With an insatiable lecher, I think this is not a strange thing. But the irreversible thing in the life of this king was a series of reproductive failures from the wives of Henry II, the second of the 6 wives and concubines of V. Henry was Anne Boleyn, the wife who was murdered, and Catherine Aragon, who is said to have happened the most. To explain his views on King Henry's pathology, the scientist put forward a new hypothesis that seems very feasible, that is, King Henry may have had a strange blood group called the positive hamstring blood group, which only had 9 white blood cells. This blood group in their body, when a man with positive blood type has sex with a woman with negative blood type, there will be about 50 cases of an immune reaction in that woman's body and directly attack the fetus developing in the womb of that woman. The first child of the father with positive blood type and the mother with negative blood type is usually good, but in the next pregnancy, the babies often have excess water in their blood. They will suffer from diseases such as anemia, jaundice, enlarged spleen, or heart failure, often leading to the bad situation of miscarriage between 24 and 28 weeks of age of Tai Kai. Queen Anne Boleyn is a typical example in this case. According to some documents, the spell Elizabeth I, daughter of Queen Anne with V. Henry the Bee, when born very healthy and without any complications. But the births were in the 2nd and 3rd of Anne Boleyn. Both had miscarriages between the 6th and 7th months. In addition to the strange blood type causing health problems, Health of King Henry B researchers also believe that the king suffered from a rare genetic syndrome called X chromosome McLeod syndrome. This disease usually only affects men and usually becomes evident from the age of 40, with symptoms including cardiovascular disease, walking problems, and major psychological syndromes, including dementia and mental breakdown. Perhaps McLeod syndrome is the strong way to explain the mental illness of V. Henry de Bass. It also explains why Henry let Bass become more dictatorial as he got older, and why he had the act of beheading Enbin, the king's wife who used to be close to his lips. There are characters that are clearly very famous, but that doesn't mean we know everything about them, even if they are the most notorious bloodthirsty in history. What do you think if Hitler was still alive? And what do you think about the tyrant Henry? To catch hope today, you have had valuable experiences with the universe. Say hello and see you guys in the next videos. Have a nice day with your family.